Chapter 3. Tales of Tails Wagging Dogs. In this chapter, we'll address staffing your growing real estate investment business and some mistakes I made that are fairly common, if not obvious. In fact, the deals that lost the most money all shared one common denominator. I'm going to talk about it in detail so you can avoid making the same mistakes on your road to riches, right? But before we dive in, as usual, I want to share an actual incident that might burn into your brain better than expert advice. This one is a story about potential landlord entrapment. Before I started investing in rental properties, I heard tons of stories about landlords behaving badly. Unfortunately, many were backed up by facts. Thinking about becoming a landlord myself, I wanted to believe that the percentage of predatory landlords was small, and that with any group of people, there were some bad ones and some good ones too. Still, unsubstantiated stories seemed to spread like wildfire through the gossip circles, and landlords were always assumed to be guilty as charged, often without any factual support of the rumor. As a result, I went into this business understanding that people and the press want to believe that landlords in general are greedy, unsavory people at best, and absolute monsters most other times. All of this might not be a revelation to you, but you should consider a potential byproduct: landlord entrapment. A few weeks after my first rental property purchase, I received a complaint about a noisy ceiling fan that supposedly was keeping a tenant awake at night. I asked the tenant when they typically left for work each morning so as not to disturb them when I came to check out the fan, which was in the bedroom. Because I had only recently purchased the property, I wasn't sure which cars in the parking lot belonged to which tenants. I knocked on the door several times at the appointed hour and waited 15 seconds before using my master key for access. As I entered, I yelled, "Maintenance," 3 times at the top of my lungs, and placed a door hanger indicating maintenance was in progress, just in case someone came home while I was inside. I use door hangers because I'm allergic to bullets. In other words, the door hangers are primarily for the landlord's protection. As I entered the apartment, it appeared the tenant was at work, as was planned. Because the blinds were closed, I used my flashlight. I had already been rightfully admonished by a different tenant for leaving a light on after performing maintenance, so I learned to carry a flashlight, and called out "maintenance" one more time as I entered the bedroom. Though there was still no response, suddenly I realized there was movement under the covers. As the sheets were accidentally cast to one side, I quickly realized the tenant was nude and either oblivious to the situation or, strangely, nonchalant about it. Wheeling around to quickly leave the room, I was called back as the tenant turned on a lamp sitting on a bedside table. She offered a brief apology and then said, "It's okay, I just overslept. Don't mind me and feel free to do whatever you need to do." I couldn't help but notice that the tenant's hair seemed freshly brushed and she had on makeup. Only after I told her that she would need to reschedule the maintenance request did she indicate that the clicking ceiling fan was now working properly. Apparently, she no longer wanted maintenance. Maybe this wasn't a setup, but I'm no Adonis, and it's hard for me to believe the circumstances of this encounter were accidental. My take from it was to use it as a learning experience, one I recounted with every new hire ever since. If you're a female investor, don't think the roles couldn't be reversed. We've suspected that tenants have intentionally requested maintenance after leaving cash or expensive-looking jewelry on a coffee table in view of a hidden camera, just hoping we would be tempted. Go about your business on and in your rental properties as if there is a camera placed by the tenant covering every square inch of the premises, because often there is. Oh, and this particular tenant quickly moved out and remarried a wealthy attorney whom she then divorced about a year later. How do I know this? Because her ex-husband came to us looking for a temporary apartment after she threw his ass out of their house. Yeah, I think we dodged a bullet. Earlier, we talked about leveraging. I mentioned then that in my third year of investing, I used the technique to buy 3 additional non-contiguous fourplexes. Because the buildings were located on different streets, I quickly learned that management of multiple non-contiguous properties was tricky for one person. An example would be scheduling appointments at different times at different locations, where a prospective tenant runs late at one place, while a second appointment shows up early at another. When I realized I couldn't figure out how to clone myself or be in 2 places at once, I decided to hire somebody. Above all else, I wanted to hire someone trustworthy. We've never accepted cash rental payments, mainly because I don't want to become a target. So my desire was less about preventing theft and mainly about finding someone who wouldn't get me sued. My first hire was great, as were several subsequent hires. But that created a dilemma for me. On many days, we were slammed. But on others, when we were full and completely caught up on maintenance, we were slow enough that I became worried someone might get bored and start looking for a more challenging or engaging job. Galactically stupid career mistake number 4. Let's buy a property to keep the staff occupied and motivated. Example number 1. We bought a second 16-unit value-add property about 50 miles south of Cloverdale in the college town of Troy, Alabama. The seller offered financing, and the property was adjacent to Troy University's main campus. The parents guaranteed the leases. What could possibly go wrong? Well, 1. Enforcing 12-month leases in a college town is incredibly challenging, especially when the parents live in China or Cambodia or Iran, parents of foreign exchange students. 2. College students can tear stuff up in their sleep. 3. During the winter and summer breaks, your property sits vacant and is therefore at greater risk of break-ins and vandalism. 4. Tenants using a hibachi in the living room can actually, believe it or not, start a fire. Who would have known? And 5. Hiring a local management company to manage and theoretically keep a closer watch on the property from just a few blocks away can truly enable them to drive nicer cars than you. The sad thing is, with this asset, I absolutely accomplished my initial investment objective of buying a property in order to keep my staff busy. Nailed it. Unfortunately, after 5 years of beating my head against a brick wall, we sold the deal for a 5-figure loss. Example number 2. We developed a 44-unit condominium on an 11-acre site in East Montgomery called the Orchards at Lake Forest. Again, it kept my staff busy, and we eventually sold out the property, albeit at a snail's pace. The added time it took the Montgomery market to absorb the new inventory meant I had to keep a fully staffed sales force on site 7 days a week, a year longer than budgeted. Do the math. This deal became a 6-figure loss. Example number 3. We bought a 31-unit property near our office that had flat roofs. There were no apparent leaks when we did our due diligence, and the roofing contractor we hired to inspect the place reported that they thought the existing membrane roofs were about 3 years old and in seemingly decent shape. Suffice it to say, I learned a lot about flat roofs from this property. Enough to know I will never buy another building that has them. It took me 10 years to realize that flat roofs, no matter the nature, will leak much sooner than pitched roofs. Even if they don't, when the scuppers are underdesigned or get clogged up by leaves, water can get into the units through the junction between walls and roofs. All it takes is one intense thunderstorm. Though we sold the deal for more than we paid for it, when you consider that we spent over $100,000 to re-roof the place twice in 10 years, we lost money. Lord help me, I hated that property. The moral to the story is never buy an asset simply to right-size your investment portfolio to your staff. Instead, right-size your staff. Sure, staffing a small real estate investment business can be tricky, but losing money on a deal you bought for the wrong reasons is a hard pill to swallow. Like most investors, I enjoy the acquisition and renovation of properties more than running the day-to-day operations. I love looking for diamonds in the rough, and I also love putting lipstick on a pig. As a result, for my business, finding and hiring proactive employees to operate the deals after repositioning was critical as my focus shifted to finding new value-add opportunities. At times when I had less skilled people managing the day-to-day operations, I should have slowed our acquisitions and plugged a leak or two. A dollar saved is never as sexy as a dollar earned, but both carry exactly the same purchasing power. I didn't always think about that. These days, YouTube makes up for a lack of expertise in many things, so the search for in-house maintenance technicians is a lesser focus of ours. Even a clumsy ogre like me can fix a ton of stuff thanks to social media. Moreover, since the pandemic, I've noticed that even my normally reliable vendors and subcontractors have staffing issues and are less responsive and dependable. So I'm forced to be a do-it-yourselfer more and more often. If this isn't your cup of tea, then for your side hustle, start a YouTube channel about investing in real estate instead of actually doing it. Of course, I'm being facetious, but I have come across a fair number of fake experts that barely understand a subject they want to exploit as monetized content. It's easy to spot the imposters. They're the ones that film themselves in a garage surrounded by luxury vehicles or boarding a private jet. I've been a real estate investor since I was 25 and still fly coach. Over the decades in all of my various businesses, I've fired an average of 3 people per position before I find a keeper. As a result, any new affiliates or employees are hired initially for just 90 days. We evaluate them every 30 days and provide feedback. If I add those conditional hires that we did not retain after 90 days, the number jumps to 10 no-goes per position. It is never fun or easy letting people go, but if they can't perform to the standard you've set for them, then keeping them on the payroll too long won't end well for them either, especially if they can land other opportunities that better suit their personality and skill set. On the second or third day after conditionally hiring a prospective property manager, I watch where they park their cars and do a little experiment. Since nobody ever beats me to the office before we open, I'll drop some trash nearby and later watch to see if they pick it up as they walk from their cars to the office. If they ignore it for 2 consecutive days, then in 9 out of 10 cases, it's a bad hire. It might sound stupid and overly simplistic, but for me it is a great indicator of whether the person is proactive and has what it takes to make a worthy contribution to the business. I'm also keen on following up maintenance work orders with an email to the tenant asking to confirm that the work was satisfactorily and professionally completed. It takes about a minute to draft and send it, and then read the response. Who could better help you decide whether your staff is up to snuff? Finally, I'd never ask an employee to undertake a task that I haven't already performed countless times or wouldn't be willing to do myself while they watched. When someone tells me that a task isn't what they signed up for, I always reply as follows. If you're hesitant to get your hands dirty, then you're in the wrong profession. Furthermore, the business requires you to be both proactive and effectively reactive. After 40 years of owning rental properties, there are still unexpected things that occur that must be dealt with. My days rarely go as planned, and no 2 days are exactly alike. On occasion, I've offered high performers an equity position in a deal. It's not done as an incentive to get them to work harder, because if that's what it might take to motivate them, then I made a bad hire. Rather, it's to get them to wake up every morning being driven to create more value for a property. Not always, but more times than not, this strategy has paid dividends for me. What's the worst hire I ever made? One in particular immediately comes to mind who was merely a part-timer. This person was so toxic that they managed to perpetually keep the entire office in an uproar. After I fired her, the police showed up at my office to question and possibly arrest me after receiving a 911 call which accused me of menacing. My staff informed the police that the former associate was outside filming their arrival from a parked car, yelling out to no one in particular, "I'm going to own this place." Apparently, she was anxious to flood social media with images of me being led away from my office in handcuffs. Just like our tenants, we have cameras too. So we shared the exit interview footage where the person was clearly the aggressor making threats, slamming doors, and generally acting like a spoiled child at Christmas after Santa forgot to buy them the Barbie doll with the Kung Fu grip. After thanking me for my time, the 2 police officers then confronted the person still in the car and informed them that they were trespassing. Correctly assuming that we were watching her reaction from the relative safety of our office windows, none of us will ever forget the demonic look she cast our way. It made Linda Blair look like a choir girl in The Exorcist. Believe it or not, a couple years later, I heard a commotion by my staff and got up from my desk to investigate. This same individual was attempting to enter the office despite being blocked at the doorway, saying they wanted to apologize to me. They left before we had to call 911, but since then I've considered installing a metal detector at our entrance. That's because I want to do this job until the day I die. I just don't want it to be the reason I die. Alabama is a right-to-work state. Your own state may not be and could require a different strategy to hire and terminate help for your business. Do some research or get advice from an expert. But here's a tip. If your staff members work from home and set their own hours, you may be able to claim independent contractor status for them as opposed to employee status. Doing so might make it easier to terminate those that can't or won't cut it without having to pander to them with written warnings, counseling, etc. All that can be a distraction when your company is too small to justify an HR person. Maybe I'll get more into that in an upcoming chapter. Just don't be a dumbass like me and buy a property as a way to cover your overhead. Buy it because you can monetize it.